Hello, dear students. I'm back with another lecture on William Shakespeare's The Tragedy of Macbeth. And in this lecture, we'll be covering from Act 5, Scene 1. All right. Now, Act 5, Scene 1 is a very interesting scene because this scene gives you a glimpse into the mind frames of the Macbeths and how it has changed. Now, I personally believe that Act 5 Scene 1 is a mirror image of Act 1 Scene 5. Basically, in Act 1 Scene 5, we saw that Lady Macbeth was in absolute control of the situation. She was in absolute control of what she has to do and what has to be done in order for them to rise to glory. But the opposite, the absolute reverse, happens in Act 5, Scene 1, where Lady Macbeth loses all control and she is sleepwalking. The impact of sin and guilt on a sensitive mind is being shown over here, and the scene you can notice is in prose because verse presents a sort of concord, it presents a sort of harmony, whereas prose presents a sort of discord. And her power of construction of sentence has declined to a great degree, and therefore she speaks in shorter sentences which are more what should I say, easy to control. However, there is something else as well, because this scene is specifically a commentary of Shakespeare upon the usage of language itself. Because you see, no matter whatever we feel, no matter whatever emotions pop up inside of us, we only have the medium of language to express ourselves. And the biggest problem with the Macbeths is that they cannot tell anybody what they have done. Now, this secret, the weight of this secret keeps multiplying within them, and it keeps on sinking within them. And it is this sinking feeling, this repressed idea of the sin and guilt which they cannot bring out. It is this repression which they have to perform throughout the day finds its voice in their sleep. Now, coincidentally, this scene has been interpreted by multiple people, including Sigmund Freud himself. And that essay is widely available on the internet and you can read about it. However, I personally believe that Freud has gone a little bit of the mark because he has treated the Macbeths not as characters but as his patients and how he would read them. However, you can agree with Freud, you can disagree with Freud, but you cannot deny his basic premise that the Macbeths are suffering from repressed anxiety and from the repressed feelings which are otherwise given voice in this scene. Whatever you repress by day gains the better half of you by night, by sleep, when your mind is not functioning. Now, since I am dealing with UG students primarily, undergraduate students primarily, so I would not go into sleep and dreams and how they function too much. But let me just give you a very simple analogy for you to understand. Imagine each and every day you have to go to college. Okay, now let me once again remind you that this is not what Freud is saying, but this is just a simple example for you to understand the complexity of the scene. Imagine every day you have to go to college. Okay, now you get say 50 rupees from your parents for your bus fare or your train fare and say for your lunch money, etc. And you have noticed that you only spend 30 rupees per day. So every day you have a surplus of 20 rupees, right? So what you do is you know that these 20 rupees are not necessary for you right now. Only the 30 are. So what you do is you maybe have a purse, you maybe have a box where or a piggy bank where you keep this surplus 20 rupees on a daily basis. Now imagine 100 days have passed. Now you have 2000 rupees because you have saved 20 on a daily basis. Now you realize that you do not have a huge expenditure right now. So what you do is you put up those 2000 rupees in a bank account, right? Where you can save them. Or you keep them with your father, your mother, or somebody whom you trust. That okay, you keep this money. Whenever I need it, I'll ask you for it. Now, to give a very simple analogy, let me remind you, I am oversimplifying, okay? So, this is not what Freud meant, but this gives you a very rough idea of how our mind works. Now, Freud divides our mind in three parts: the conscious, the subconscious, or the preconscious. The preconscious is primarily a Jungian idea. Jung was one of Freud's friends and co workers. And third is the unconscious. Now, those 30 rupees that you regularly use, that is the things that we need right now, is basically what is stored in the conscious. Like the things that we need to deal with right now. Like right now, I'm teaching you Macbeth and you are trying to learn Macbeth. So, this is the kind of attention that we need right now. So, whatever is happening outside of the periphery of this, say your mother is cooking a good meal, or say somebody is ill at the house, and all of this you want to keep outside your mind for the time being. So those things which do not need our immediate attention, they get stored in a place where we can easily access them later. Okay, so they get stored in that piggy bank or that box, which is the subconscious or the preconscious. Okay, and the third thing is the unconscious, which is like the bank. So once you keep your money, you cannot just go and you just tell the manager that give me my money. You can't do that. You have a procedure, like you have to write a check or you have to have a card, and then you insert that card in the proper ATM slot, and from there you can take out the money. Right? That is how the banks work. So similarly, what happens is that the unconscious is not within our control. There we do not have any specific control. It has its own grammar, it works in its own way, and sometimes it so happens, just like every now and then, the bank gives you a kind of some extra money for keeping money over there, right? It's like you have your entire set of money and then they give you some form of interest. Similarly, just like the bank generates some interest, in your weaker moments, your unconscious also gives you some interest. Now, it's a very bad way of putting it, but I do not have a simpler analogy for the UG students to understand it. So, what happens is that the unconscious sometimes brings back, it resurfaces. Just like if you put an empty mug in a water filled bucket, you force it down and then you leave it, just like it resurfaces, boinks back. Similarly, what happens is that in the unconscious, there are those stored data over which we do not have any control. And sometimes when our guards are down, when our proper consciousness is not working, the unconscious sometimes channelizes some data, like some interest. Okay. And then, our mind is quite like a barricade. Our mind puts a barricade. So there are three layers, and in between those layers, the mind kind of puts some barricades. Okay. Now, in order for, it's like a firewall, or it's like a, to put it more simply, it's simply like a barricade. It's like a dam. So sometimes what happens is that the unconscious knows that if it brings out those things as they are, your mind will barricade them because it's in sleep, so it's in guard mode. So what it does is it simply channelizes them in such a way that they are not directly being shown, but they are symbolically intended. For example, let me give you one example. Okay. For instance, sometimes we think, say, imagine your exams are coming up and suddenly you have a dream that you are falling from a high place. Now, this dream can be interpreted that you have anxieties, you have fears that your marks will not be as good as you imagine, and you will have declining grades. So, that is being symbolized by falling from a high place. Now, when we were children, we were very naughty, and maybe we used to jump from chairs, from tables, we used to slide, we used to swing, and we used to play outside sometimes. So what happens is the mind shows you those images in such a way, it magnifies those images in such a way that your barricades do not stop them altogether, and the mind kind of conveys your inherent fear to you without being absolutely offensive. Okay, now that is the simplest way that I can think of explaining Freud's three-way system to you, because I do not have a simpler analogy, and these things are very, very difficult. Trust me. In the next semester, next to no, in the next when you will be in your third year, in your fifth semester, now you are in your second semester, I will be teaching you Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence. Okay, and then I'll be explaining it in greater detail, because by then you will have grown up a bit, and you will have a greater understanding of texts. So then I will give you a detailed explanation of how these things work. Before I begin Sons and Lovers, for 1 month, I just teach you how the mind works. I teach you Freud, I teach you a bit of Lacan. So then I'll give you a very detailed, I have a beautiful PPT which I prepared a few years ago. So I show that, and I show you how these things work. Okay, so that's a very different thing, and when we come to that, we'll come to that. But for now, have this little understanding for your own benefit, so that you can understand what is going on over here. Okay, so let's go into the scene. So the scene takes place in Dunsinane, a room in the castle. And let me remind you, in Act 4, Scene 1, the witches have already prophesied that Macbeth does not need to worry until Burnham would come to Dunsinane, and this scene is located in Dunsinane. So you can understand that already the fall of Macbeth has begun. Now, if you read a little bit about tragedy, you find a very interesting person whose name is Gustav Freytag. Freytag has a pyramid, rising action, falling action, he shows. And towards the end, there is something called denouement. Okay, denouement means a kind of falling action. That is where all things start to fall in place, where all the puzzles are being sorted out. And this is the beginning. The fifth act is the beginning of the puzzles being sorted out. Actually, it has begun from Act 4, Scene 3 already, but now it's taking its motion. Enter a doctor of physique and a waiting gentlewoman. So there were several waiting women for the royalty. Even in India, we call them dasis. And there is a doctor of physique. So he is basically a physician by the modern parlance. Okay, doctor, I have two nights watched with you, but can perceive no truth in your report. When was it she last walked? So this scene is popularly known as the sleepwalking scene. Now, since I have already read the play many times, and I have been teaching it for almost 5 years now, so I've also taught it many times, and therefore from my own experience, let me tell you one thing. If Act 5 Scene 3, I'll come to that very soon, if Act 5 Scene 3 took place before Act 5 Scene 1, trust me, Act 5 Scene 1 would not have happened altogether. Or Act 5 Scene 5 would not have happened altogether. At least a major part of it. The most famous dialogues of Macbeth perhaps would not have taken place. Tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace. That dialogue would have taken place. Why? I'll come to that later. Keep it in your mind. And if I can't justify it, just remind me in the comment section that, sir, you haven't justified it, and I'll do so. Okay. So the doctor says that Gentlewoman, you have told me that Lady Macbeth is sleepwalking, but I have been watching her for 2 nights now and I haven't seen her sleepwalking at all. So I find that you must be hallucinating yourself. Since His Majesty went into the field, I have seen her rise from her bed, throw her nightgown upon her, unlock her closet, take forth paper, fold it, write upon it, read it, afterwards seal it, and again return to bed, yet all this while in a most fast asleep. So she is reenacting the function of rewriting that letter as if she is trying to get back to the roots of all this desire. And what is the root of all her desire? That one letter in Act 1, Scene 5. And she is trying to redo it and undo it in the process. Every redoing is an undoing in a way, because you undo the earlier effort and you redo it. Now, in post structuralist theory, which is a very advanced form of theory, there is a very interesting idea. The idea is of iterability. Iterability. I-T-E-R, ability. Iterability. Iterability means to repeat the thing, but with a little bit of difference. Okay. For instance, let me give you an example. The cat is sitting on the tin roof. If I say this sentence. So here I use the word cat. Again, if I use the same word cat in a different sentence, like the model did a brilliant catwalk. So the cat, this word is being repeated, although with a difference of meaning. So this is called iterability. Like you repeat the same thing in a different way. So therefore, every redoing is a form of undoing as well. A great perturbation in nature to receive at once the benefit of sleep and do the effects of watching. In this slumbery agitation, besides her walking and other actual performances, what at any time have you heard her say? So now the doctor understands that her mind is oppressed by something because it is not natural to walk while sleeping. And therefore, the doctor says that since she is doing this, since she is performing something, that is writing a letter, express herself. Why else would you write a letter? You are trying to express yourself, right? And if you are trying to express yourself, that is a form of performance, just like an actor playing a role on the stage or on the screen is giving a performance, is expressing himself. Similarly, a writer writing something is a person trying to express himself or herself. So all of our forms and modes of expression are actually our own performances of our own selves. If that is true, then we must realize that she's trying to express herself. But if she's trying to express herself, then she must be saying something as well. So the doctor is bang on point. And look, the gentlewoman says, that, sir, which I will not report after her. So I will not tell you. You may to me, it is most meet you should. As it is said that you should not hide anything from your doctor and your lawyer. So he says that depending upon that, I might have some form of treatment available for her. Neither you nor anyone having no witness to confirm my speech. Now, look, this interestingly talks about the social hierarchy of that time, because if she realizes that even the lords are not spared when they open their mouths or when they even think of opening their mouths, and she is simply a lowly watching woman. She knows that she is not safe if she opens her mouth. Without any form of witness, She would not open her mouth. Enter Lady Macbeth with a taper. Taper means a kind of light, a torch. Okay. Lo you, here she comes. So look, here she comes. This is her very guise, and upon my life, fast asleep. Observe her, stand close. How comes she by that light? So now the doctor is worried that since she has fire in her arms, she might cause herself some danger in her sleep. So he asks that why does she have that light with her? Why it stood by her, she has light by her continually, it is her command. So look, ironically, the very Lady Macbeth who wanted to invoke the night, the darkness, into her own self to bring about an easy closure to her duties cannot reside without light right now. You know, a similar thing happens in a later play, not by Shakespeare but by John Webster. There is a famous play by Webster called The Duchess of Malfi. And in that play, there is a character called Ferdinand. Ferdinand also did the same thing. He used to do all his dark works in darkness, and towards the end, he cannot walk without a light. He cannot be without a light. So these are the pangs of the guilty consciousness, of the guilty conscience, which bring about to shard the soul. You see, her eyes are open, aye, but their senses are shut. So during sleepwalking, usually people's eyes are open, but uh, you will find no pupil dilation usually. So their senses are shut. What is it she does now? Look how she rubs her hands. Look, she had said that a little water cleanses of our deeds, but now she cannot get rid of the spots of her crime from herself. It is an accustomed action with her to seem thus washing her hands. I have known her continue in this a quarter of an hour. So almost for 15 minutes she does this every time. And look now, Lady Macbeth speaks. Yet here's a spot. The doctor says, listen, she speaks. I will set down what comes from her to satisfy my remembrance the more strongly. So he takes notes. Now you see, the progress of medical science has taken place from this body of data, of recorded data. And this is something that a philosopher whose name is Michel Foucault, he points out. Until the birth of the modern medical sciences, something interesting happened. That is, people went to the church, they would go to a clergy and they would say, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. And whatever he or she confessed to the Father in a confession room stayed between the two, and God was the witness. Okay. But the thing was that with modern medical science, science created a body of knowledge for recording, deciphering, and disseminating for future generations to derive inferences from them. And Foucault says that this is a major paradigm shift in the human thought. That is, whatever we are saying is being recorded. And there are greater implications to this, but I would not go into them because they are a little bit difficult stuff. Okay. But just let me remind you that Shakespeare is already noticing how modern medicine is developing. Lady Macbeth, out, damned spot, out, I say. One, two, why, when 'tis time to do it? Hell is murky. Fie, my lord, fie, a soldier and afeard. What need we fear? Who knows it? When none can call our part to account, yet who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him? So whereas Macbeth is brazen and bold in his pursuits of perversion, Lady Macbeth is slowly crumbling. under the weight of the sin she has committed. A little water used to get the job done up till now, but now nothing can get rid of the guilty conscience that she bears within her. Her own unconscious is now popping up these images of blood. And the blood is a very significant metaphor and an image in the entire course of the play. Look, he says hell is murky, but up till now she had been a devoted votary of the domain of hell itself. And by saying who would have thought the old man to have so much blood in him, she is almost exposing the deed that they have committed. It is also a deed without a name, but a deed that brings a lot of shame and ignominy. Doctor says, do you mark that? Now the doctor realizes what the Macbeths have actually done. So what was a secret privy to a few is now an open secret to the commoners as well, and everybody understands what the Macbeths have done. The Thane of Fife had a wife, where is she now? What, will these hands never be clean? No more of that, my lord, no more of that, you mar with all this starting. So this is perhaps the moment when Macduff was actually telling everyone about the murder, and Macbeth got startled. And Macbeth kept on going round and round with his rhetoric. Go to, you have known what you should not. Now, there are two interpretations to this line. Number one is that the doctor addresses this line to the gentlewoman because he believes that she has known a lot and which might be dangerous for her. Okay. But the modern editors think that this line is kind of dedicated to Lady Macbeth because it is her knowledge which dooms her. Being sure of something and not being able to communicate it, that's a very difficult thing to digest. That's a very difficult thing to keep in. She has spoke what she should not, I'm sure of that. Heaven knows what she has known. So they are still trying to keep themselves in the armor of disbelief, if that helps them in any way. Here's the smell of blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten these little hands. Oh, oh, oh. What a sigh is there. The heart is sorely charged. At this moment, you cannot but pity Lady Macbeth. She has lost all of her cognitive behaviors. She has lost all control over herself. And she has now become a puppet to her senses. She has now become a puppet to her guilt, and it exposes her at every turn. And the very Lady Macbeth, who was once in charge and said that a little water gets you rid of all the blood, now thinks that all the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten these little hands. And look, she refers to her hands as little. And in a sense, this word little is kind of showing that these are incompetent hands. Moreover, we must realize that here Shakespeare is also referring to the trade routes because the perfumes of Arabia were very popular back then. In 1453, when Constantinople fell, the trade routes, the Silk Road, was taken over by the local rulers, and the trade route became impossible to find on land. So Vasco da Gama, Christopher Columbus, and people like them, they started to conduct naval voyages during this time. And there is a long history to that. And Shakespeare just gives us a glimpse of that. This is a remembrance, this is a desire to get back to that. And perhaps this is a recapitulation of the bounty that once England had. I would not have such a heart in my bosom for the dignity of my own body. Whereas the doctor empathizes or sympathizes with Lady Macbeth, the gentlewoman at wedding, she has understood what she has done, and she says that she has violated the sanctity of her body. And for my entire life, I would not love to have a heart as charged as she possesses, because that is sacrilege. Well, 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 pray God it be, sir. This disease is beyond my practice. Yet I have known those which have walked in their sleep, who have died holily in their beds. The doctor says that sleepwalking has happened. It is not the first instance of sleepwalking. However, many people have died holily in their beds despite knowing their guilt. The problem is that Shakespeare presents us with a very problematic character. During the Elizabethan age, there were two kinds of characters. One was the Renaissance character, the other was the Reformation character. What is a Renaissance character and what is a Reformation character? Let me go into a bit more difficult discussions, because now we are approaching the end of Macbeth and we need to understand the issues properly. Imagine you love a certain food. Okay. Say you love biryani. Now biryani costs around say 150 to 180 rupees usually. Now imagine you have 50 rupees in your pocket and there are no friends around you with whom you can share. So this desire for biryani, this is what Freud would very simply call your pleasure principle. Okay, pleasure principle is much different than this, but I am just giving you a very simple analogy for you to understand. Say pleasure principle is that which we desire, absolutely desire for our own pleasure. It is often sexual in nature, but let's take the example of biryani, because foodgasm matters. So imagine you have a craving, very intense craving for biryani, but you can't have it because you do not have that amount of money. And then you come back home and your mother has cooked maybe say rice and a little bit of chicken. Okay, now that is your reality. You wanted to have biryani, but you have rice and chicken at home, or maybe rice and say egg curry at home. So that is your reality. Now what do? Maybe you can do a lot of things. You can think about that biryani while eating that rice and egg curry or chicken curry, or you can watch videos of biryani on YouTube or on some other food blog or food channel, and that is how you mitigate the difference. Now imagine if this could be quantified in some form of amount. Say your desire to have biryani is 2000 unit. Okay, that is your pleasure principle. But the rice and the egg curry is your reality. That's your reality principle. Okay, that is what you can have right now. So say that comes around say at 700 units. Now these 1300 units gap, this is what is called repression. Okay, so we are all repressed beings. The Renaissance individual always gives more focus to his pleasure principle and does not care about the reality principle. quite like Macbeth. Therefore, they think that if I develop, the society will develop accordingly. On the other hand, we have the Reformation characters who give more focus to the reality principle and they focus more on developing the society. Imagine if I have, say, 1000 rupees and my all of my friends have 10 rupees. So I think that okay, say 10 of my friends have 10 rupees and I have 1000 rupees. So I think that since I have 1000 rupees, I can spend more on them. So imagine I'm spending say 100 on five of my friends. Okay, so that's how I can bring them together. Not 100. Say, let's imagine I'm spending 50 rupees on all my friends. So I am still higher, but they are in a better position. This is the logic of the Renaissance character. To be very, very simple, I'm not saying that these are the actual theories because they are very difficult. I'm just giving you analogies so that you can understand easily. On the other hand, the Reformation character would think that okay, I'm being given 1000 rupees and my friends do not have money. I have five friends. Then why not give 100 to? Then why not divide the money equally? Say I have four friends. So he would say, let's divide the money equally, 200 each. So now altogether we have more spending capability. That is, if everybody had 100 rupees and I had 1000 rupees, say we have gone to KFC and they're buying a burger and I am buying an entire meal. So that creates discrepancy. But I think that okay, the society is going towards that position where we are capable of buying a burger. Everybody is capable of buying a burger, but some are capable of buying an entire meal. On the other hand, the Reformation guy would give 200 to each and everyone so that all of them can buy a meal and still have some money left so that they can spend it on other things. So you see what is happening? The buying capacity is growing up. And now what happens is that put into perspective, this was just an example, but put into proper perspective that since the thinks about the self and gives more value to the pleasure principle, when there is that repression, the Renaissance character can only regret but never repent. On the other hand, if the Reformation person fails, then the Reformation character repents and he does not regret because he gave it all. Right? So he can repent. The problem with the Macbeths is that they are Renaissance characters and therefore they regret, they cannot repent. If they had been Reformation characters, they could have repented and easily get rid of their own charged soul. But that does not happen. So look, the doctor says that I do not have any remedy for this. And then Lady Macbeth continues, wash your hands, put on your nightgown, look not so pale. I tell you yet again, Banquo's buried, he cannot come out of his grave. So look, Macbeth had asked for the frame of things to disjoin. For Lady Macbeth now, the frame of things have disjointed. And she is going into an anachrony. Anachrony means not in a chronological order. So she is now picking bits and pieces and fusing them together to create a dream reality from the original reality that she has lived. So from lived reality to dream reality, when this transformation takes place, the chronology of things keeps on disrupting. So the frame of things have disjointed for Lady Macbeth. Even so, the doctor is shocked that even Banquo. To bed, there's knocking at the gate. Come, 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 give me your hand. What's done cannot be undone. To bed, to bed, to bed. Exit. Will she go now to bed? Directly. Foul whisperings are abroad. Unnatural deeds to breed unnatural troubles. Infected minds to their deaf pillows will discharge their secrets. More needs she the divine than the physician. God, God, forgive us all. But Lady Macbeth cannot ask for forgiveness. All she can do is keep on going round and round in the vortex of sin and guilt. She cannot repent, she can only regret. Look after her, remove from her the means of all annoyance, and still keep eyes upon her. So good night, my mind she has mated, and amazed my sight. I think but dare not speak. Good night, good doctor. Now, this line is very interesting. I think but dare not speak. Perhaps this is what animated Lady Macbeth as well. Now, you see, a secret is a very problematic thing because a secret only becomes a secret when it is told to someone. And paradoxically, a secret does not remain a secret when it is told to someone. There is a secret is a thing which you tell to someone, but you cannot tell to someone. So it is this double-edged sword. And Lady Macbeth is at the brunt of that sword. She is receiving the brunt of that sword, and therefore she is vexed and perplexed, and her mind is so very disrupted through that. Now, you see, the problem is that Shakespeare is writing at a time when there was a philosopher whose name was Rene Descartes. Rene Descartes, in his meditations in 1530s, Rene Descartes said a very interesting thing: "Cogito ergo sum." I think, therefore I am. But the problem is that Lady Macbeth has lost all cognitive comprehensions in a very chronological course, and therefore her existence is very problematic. And therefore, in a very philosophical sense as well, the doctor says that keep away from her everything that annoys her, so that if she is given a straight course of action, perhaps she will get a grip over herself. But as we shall see, that is not going to happen. The sleepwalking scene is a very interesting scene because here we see how the things turn, how the things unfold. So with this, I'll end this lecture because I wanted to make a separate video on the sleepwalking scene because it is such an interesting scene. You know, Act 5, Scene 1, Act 5, Scene 5, they are so very interesting scenes because they open up the Macbeths and we can take a peep into their minds. So they are beautiful scenes, and I hope you have understood what I wanted to say, what I wanted to convey. If there are questions, put them in the comment section. I would be more than happy to answer. Thank you. See you once again. Have a good day and be careful because of the pandemic. Obey the rules and take care. Hope to see you soon again with another lecture on Macbeth or perhaps something else.